Hello everybody, I am Sleep Buccaneer. Today we're going to be continuing with my theory on the Master of Masters from the last video. I pretty much opened this part with what I believe were the Master of Masters' possible origins. I'll give you a quick recap on this, but if you want a little more detail on the analysis, then feel free to check out the previous video at any time. In that video, I said that I believe the Master of Masters was the chosen protector of Kingdom Hearts in his past, and that his weapon of choice is the original Fable Keyblade. I also mentioned that I believed Kingdom Hearts was similar to the planet from Final Fantasy VII, and that it chose the Master of Masters to act as a humanoid weapon of sorts to protect itself. I want this to stay in your minds as I come to the final conclusion later down the line. So, just as a bullet point, let's say the Master of Masters was the true and chosen protector of Kingdom Hearts. That's our major point and setup right now. Now, this may be wrong, since I'm not the story writer of Kingdom Hearts. He could have a very different role in the story for all we know. There is little evidence to justify him being a Master Protector other than the one scene between him and Master Era. Even then, that small hint could be pointing us to something else. But from a writer's perspective, the Master of Masters having such a duty is really the only thing I could think of that would be the most shocking out of his reveal. That's just the gist of this being an out there theory. If he were just some random guy who wanted ultimate knowledge and power other than, that only Kingdom Hearts or pure darkness possessed, the way Xehanort did, we would be right back at square one with the still looming question, what is Kingdom Hearts? Why do these two people want it specifically? Why don't more people want its power? How many wars or battles have been fought for possession of Kingdom Hearts? Because if it was just the one war from a whole millennium or century ago that set everything in motion for the future, then that makes zero sense. No one should know anything about the history of the war because it was so long ago, and everyone's memories were supposedly wiped, with exception to a few people. How big of a mouth did the Union leaders or apprentices have? Do you see where I'm going with this? Regardless of that, however, if the Master of Masters was really the protector of Kingdom Hearts originally, then he's the only one who can give the players a reason for why everything is the way it is. By making that sort of move in the story, that separates the Master of Masters and Master Xehanort on a character development level. Master Xehanort never really hid his intentions throughout the story, but the Master of Masters, should my theory be proven right, hid himself and his intentions really well. Alright, so enough of that. Let's jump in with the first subheader. The Master of Masters doesn't know what he's actually doing. So let me give you reason one for why I think this is the case. As a recap, I mentioned in my first theory video that the Foretellers were given the wrong roles. The Master gave each person one job based on their personalities, and I think in the back of his mind, he did believe his apprentices could handle it. Whether that helps or hurts him is a mystery. But here's the problem. I don't think he really knew his apprentices well enough. And the fact that the roles he gave them seemed more personality-based rather than action-based tells me he didn't think that part through. Prime example. The Cherokee narrator says that the Master of Masters gave each of his apprentices a copy of the Book of Prophecies, right? So square or no more. You're telling me that someone who can see into the future can't see how the wrong roles can result in turmoil? Mind you, we have no idea if giving each foreteller his or her role is another part of the book that he ripped out. That could have been chapter 2 or something. He already took the time to rip out the page containing information about the traitor from each book. I wouldn't put it past him to exclude an entire chapter containing information on how he chooses Union leaders. You might think this doesn't matter, but I beg to differ. Here's why. We have no idea when the Master of Masters obtained his foresight abilities. If the Master of Masters had a specific time slot when he obtained his foresight, then that leaves the question of whether or not choosing his apprentices was part of his ability to read into the future. Era, Aced, Envy, Gula, Ava, and Lushu were hand-chosen by the Master of Masters out of everyone else who existed in Daybreak Town to become his apprentices. If the Master of Masters obtained his foresight abilities before he chose them, then he already knew what would happen to them should the notion of a traitor arise. Meaning he set them up for failure from day one of creating the roles and choosing which foreteller would get that role. That, unfortunately, would make my first theory valid. However, if he obtained his foresight abilities after choosing his apprentices, then that tells me that he rushed the decision because he had a short amount of time to work with. So let me explain how I don't think he knew that the Foretellers had the wrong role. I'll start with Master Era. Let me give you some reasons for why Era didn't make much of a leader. For one, He automatically assumed his own comrades were traitors, just because of the nightmare tree appearing nearby. That's pretty obvious, right? I will give Ira some credit because he does link up the nightmare tree with the bangles, and the nightmare in Key explains the whole purpose of the bangle being a tool to collect darkness in Key. I think that information would have probably gone over Asad's head. Now, here's the main problem with the use of the bangle. Ira said, we don't necessarily concern ourselves with the tools used at the wielder's disposal. Why? You even told the others that using the dark energy collected in the bangle is the equivalent of using the power of darkness. A leader wouldn't allow anyone to use the bangle if that's the case. So there's reason number 2. My third reason is a result of him just being distant from his comrades for a majority of the movie. Did you notice in back cover how Ira didn't show up to any of the Foreteller fights? 2 of those fights were in broad daylight. If you played Unchained Key or Union Cross up to the point where Envy and Asad fight, you, Scald, and your Cherith see the clash as you're going to the Foretellers tower. So, how are you just now showing up after Asad fought 3 battles back to back? That tells me that Ira doesn't know anything that's going on behind the scenes without Envy telling him something. So either he's too engrossed in trying to uncover the traitor, or he's too busy with his union to settle the dispute. I've seen his rankings. His union is put to work. Next up is Master Envy, who was appointed observer and mediator. I had no problem with this until the meeting in the warehouse where she argues with Asad, not for the obvious reasons, like accusing him of being tainted by darkness, but for her reaction when Asad tries to convince her to form an alliance with them. She jumped on Asad's case at the mention of the word without letting him finish his statement. At least Ava let him explain himself and decided, nah fam, I ain't about that group project life. No, Envy shut him down and just made him angry, and then proceeded to remind him that the master said fusing groups would form an imbalance of and an insatiable thirst for power. As a mediator, however, isn't it your job to hear the man out and then reevaluate the possible benefits of doing so? If there are more cons than pros for such a thing, then as a mediator, it's your job to explain that to him. The definition of a mediator is someone who works with both sides in a dispute in an attempt to help them reach an agreement or, find some middle ground. That of which she didn't do. Reason 2. Gula told Asad that Envy convinced him to break his alliance with Asad, and he gave his own personal reasons to back himself up. Okay, so wait a minute. When did that happen? Because the fact that Envy pulled Gula to the side and told him to break the alliance rather than question why he believed the alliance was a good idea tells me she was a bit on the desperate side. At the very least, she could have just heard another perspective on the matter of alliances and maybe question it for herself. But nah, she didn't do any of that. And that kind of behavior isn't suited for someone meant to be a mediator. Reason 3. I don't know what Envy and Asad said to each other for a fight to break out, but the fact that a fight broke out tells me she didn't do a good job calming Asad down or finding some middle ground with him. She even calls him the traitor after he explained his reasoning for his actions. Again, what kind of mediator are you? He literally just wants to protect the world, and you're putting everyone against him just because he had a different approach to handling the issue at hand. Reason 4. Envy argues with Ava after she indirectly admits that she told Ira where Gula was hiding after he and Asad have their short scuffle. Ava questions her on the matter, and Envy argues, probably out of frustration at this point, that her actions shouldn't concern Ava, since Ava's been training people in secret. Okay, so clearly it's not secret enough if you found out about it, because that means anyone who decided to pull an Ira and be thorough could have found the location too. Envy could have easily just said that Ira needs to settle this because we're doing a terrible job at trying to find out what to do, and he's the leader with enough authority to have the final say in the matter. What is the problem? Are you just incapable of finding a middle ground with anyone or anything? Moving on. Honestly, I can't really say much on Asad other than he needed to control his temper better. He didn't even care if he died on the false accusation of him being the traitor. I mean, I had to give him a hand clap because I would have just left. In spite of the fact that he went behind Ira to try to do something, he at least tried to do something. I get that everyone probably thinks Asad's just power hungry, so he can't see how his actions are terrible. But name me one thing he's done in that entire movie that wasn't part of his role. I'll wait. Yeah, nothing I said deviated from his role. Ira made a poor judgment on his comrades, pretty much stopped I said from helping him as vice leader, and couldn't even talk to them without suspicion or otherwise. That's probably why he was so distant from everything. I mean, I said did what he was supposed to do. Take up the mantle if the leader isn't doing anything that's solving the problem. He couldn't push Ira into action because Ira didn't give him a window to do so. Now, I come to Gula. He is just as mysterious as Luciu and the Master, so I can't say much on him either. In back cover, when he talks to Ava, he pretty much explains to her that he has the lost page and has been trying to uncover the traitor. He thought it was I said, but was proven wrong and was beaten down for it. Okay, I've got no problems here. Then Little Dude says the page is ambiguous at best. There are two definitions of the word ambiguous. One, having more than one meaning. Two, causing confusion. You gave that page to someone who can't properly interpret, aka read your writing. If that's the case, back cover made Ira an impressive piece of work, because it's a miracle that Ira was able to find out not only what you wrote, but that the page that's got Gula lost is missing. Yeah, Gula caught on to your plan within a couple of seconds of you explaining it to him, but he can't read what you wrote. How was he supposed to solve the problem? That tells me you gave him the wrong role completely. No one else other than Ira brought up that a page was missing. That should have clued you in that none of your writing makes sense for even the smartest people among the Foretellers. I don't know if Luciu had a book of prophecies for dummies copy somewhere in his room, but Jesus. Now I move on to Master Ava. Like I said, she pretty much followed her role down to a science, except when it came to Luciu and I said. She wasn't supposed to fight in any battles, but she did. Nice. Okay, so now I come to Luciu. There's really nothing I can say about him because he doesn't do anything in the movie of true significance. And I'm not going to count him bringing a box to the desert as plot significant because that's more like plot buildup. Regardless of that, by the time we see Luciu for the first time in the Key universe, he tells Ava about the traitor and sparks off the war. I'm pretty sure that had nothing to do with your role. You were supposed to watch the others from afar, make sure the Master saw everything that happened with the war, and then go off and train whoever the hell you were supposed to train. Now, if we go back to Luciu's talk with the Master says, no book of prophecies to keep you company. That tells me Luciu read the book too, and that, like Gula, he had the lost page in his version. Not only do you know who the traitor is, but you know what starts the war. Now, if he's anything like Gula, then it's possible that Luciu thinks the lost page, or that last page with the war starting, is also ambiguous. If that's the case, yeah, he knows who the traitor is, but he doesn't know that he himself starts the war. Again, your writing is potato. Now, I know this sounds like a rant at this point, so let me come back to my point. Okay, so the Master might have slipped up with their tasks. Let's take a look at Union Cross, where we learn more about Master Ava's role. So, the Master of Masters tells Ava to write down some new rules for the Union leaders of the Dandelions to follow. I've got some breaking news for you people. The Dandelions were handpicked from each and every union by Ava to not join in on the war, right? Therefore, everyone else in the Foretellers unions, including Ava's, who didn't make the cut, is part of the war. I'm just going to ask a vital question. At what point did it cross your mind that Ava would survive in the war if she's part of the war? I don't know when exactly the war starts, but it happens right after she confronts Luciu. If she went in pre-weakened by Luciu to gather her people and go to war, the chances of her surviving just got a little slimmer. I said it took a decent beating from Envy, Gula, and Ava before he caved in from exhaustion when he saw Ira. I don't know how powerful Luciu is, but I doubt he's that weak. Now, I don't think he would drag Ava in the dirt, but I don't think he'd go easy on her either. I can't imagine anyone else doing the same in a war. I mean, let's think about this together. If Ava died in the war, or according to young Xehanort, disappeared and became a lost master, then how are the Union leaders in the Dandelions supposed to know what to do next? Do you see what I mean by how this wasn't thought through? I'm not even considering the plot holes of the story. I'm just going by what they gave us. With that said, let me turn your attention to reason 3 for why I think this dude is clueless. In his book of prophecy, he wrote that the traitor is the one who bears the sigil. For the most part, we all believe that the sigil is the recusant sigil. Okay, I buy that. No problem. So if he knows that the traitor carries the sigil, and he knows that Kingdom Hearts will fall if no one stops him, what is the purpose of having all those eyes? I'll tell you why. This man doesn't know who the traitor is either. Think about that. Why would you have all those eyes if you know the person has a sigil, and you know if you don't stop him, Kingdom Hearts is going to fall, or the world is going to go into darkness? Yeah. Could you do... Okay. Now, there's actually a very interesting storytelling pattern behind this. So this isn't a rant-y response to this detail. You know how in some stories, the person who has visions only sees certain details until the event actually occurs? It's usually this big recall sequence where they memorize events that transpire and use that knowledge to stop the antagonist. I firmly believe that the same thing is happening here. Okay, remember when I said I believe Kingdom Hearts bargained with the Master of Masters to be its protector? Well, I think Kingdom Hearts gave him a few snippets of the future leading up to the impending darkness, but not the whole scenario. Once the Master of Masters accepted his duty as protector, I think he went through great lengths to learn about the thing he's protecting by writing the details he was able to see and the things he trained himself to do in journals. This could include his actual combat training with the Keyblade through the fairy tale worlds connected to Daybreak Town. Even then, maybe he traveled throughout Daybreak Town during his training and found each apprentice over time. If he trained with the blade and his original level of power increased significantly, then it's possible that Kingdom Hearts gave him more accurate details of the visions of the future and more useful abilities like the ability to create weaker Keyblades so other people could protect those with light from darkness when he can't do it himself. With the knowledge of a traitor having been given to him, it's possible that he used up a good portion of his power to make all of those Starlight Keyblades for different wielders, the individual keychains for the different worlds, and an even greater amount of power just to craft the specialized Keyblades the Foretellers would use. With most of his powers used up, his disappearance could have been more like a recovery. I don't know how much power the man actually had, but I can't imagine it being less than grand. Now, let me give you reason number 4 for why I think this man is potentially clueless. This is actually why this theory even has a subheader 1. Okay, so in Union Cross, the Master of Masters tells Ava that he wants to erase the memories of the Dandelions so that they can, start with a clean slate. I got you, fam. So, what does he tell Ava when she asks if he can do that? This man says, apparently so.
Oh my God!
Okay, so how do you not know you have that ability? You know what? Let me slow down because this could mean one of two things. Either he's still training as the protector of Kingdom Hearts by this time and he just received that ability because even a master still has learning to do. Or he discovered that he could erase memories by some freak accident, which means he never knew he had that power yet. So is he being sarcastic about his abilities or did he know about that power and just didn't want to brag about it? You see where I'm going? Okay, so whatever. So let's sum up everything we know for subheader 1. The master doesn't know what he's doing. Okay. So 1, he didn't give his apprentices the correct roles because of possibly little timing. 2, Ava's fate in the war is completely unknown and could backfire on his plans for the future. 3, he doesn't know who the traitor is either because he also has very few details in his visions to determine who it might be. And lastly, he's still learning more about his new powers, so he hasn't had time to master his strength yet or even develop his plans to where they're foolproof. Now, with all that said, I'll shoot what I believe could have been his intentions, assuming that subheader 1 is valid. I think the reason he gave his apprentices the Keyblades with the Eye of Darkness was that so he himself could discover where the traitor would be amongst the chaos while he recovered at some arbitrary place. Once he spotted the traitor himself, then he would come back and stop the traitor from destroying or possessing Kingdom Hearts, which would be his overall duty as protector. Now, when the traitor is gone, my guess is he'll choose someone else to take his place and join with Kingdom Hearts. Since none of his apprentices actually found the traitor, then that means none of them were worthy to take his place. With their unfortunate end, I think the Master of Masters came back after Luxu fulfilled his role and absorbed the power he placed in the Keyblades to restore himself, which makes those blades essentially powerless and lifeless, rather than just dormant. Once he finished, he returned to his arbitrary place to recover. Okay, now I will go ahead and stop at this point. We will continue on to part 3 as planned, discussing the other possibility for the Master of Masters. But you guys let me know in the comments section what you think about the Master of Masters. Go ahead and be an out there theorist. What's the worst that could happen? Stay tuned for the next part, and I'll check you guys later.
Put your fists into the air and raise a rebel yell. There's lots of bad uns out there you need to send to hell. With Pack-a-Punch, I have a hunch your problems will be